In the 1980s and 90s, Wolfram Schultz and his team at the University of Cambridge decided to study the brains of monkeys. More specifically, they decided to study a monkey, Julio, as his brain developed a new habit. In the experiment, Julio was placed in front of a screen that flashed different shapes. When Julio saw a shape, he was supposed to pull a lever, which would in turn release a drop of blackberry juice, his favorite treat. At first, Julio didn't know what to do. His brain didn't associate the shape that he saw on the screen with the drop of blackberry juice he was inevitably going to receive. But his brain started learning. Slowly, Julio discovered the habit Schultz was trying to ingrain in him. See the shape, pull the lever, get the juice. During the process, Schultz and his team studied Julio's brain and its release of dopamine. At first, levels of dopamine in Julio's brain would only rise when he got the juice reward. But as soon as Julio began to recognize the shapes as a sign that he'd get the juice, he began to surprise the scientists. Instead of ending his routine with the rise in dopamine, he began to start his routine with a burst in dopamine. The second he saw the shape, his brain would reward him with dopamine. But it stopped rewarding him when he got the juice. If you need a visual, when he was forming his habit, his system was shape, lever, juice, where he received the dopamine burst when he got the juice. As his habit became more ingrained, his system became shape, lever, juice, but his dopamine was released at the shape. So when he saw a shape, his conscious brain would reward him in advance, and then let the less aware parts of his brain take over so they could complete the routine. This allowed his more conscious brain to be used for more important thoughts. People form habits just like Julio, and our habits dominate our lives. You have shower habits that kick in every time you get in the shower, so you don't have to reread the label for how to wash your hair. Instead, you can use your conscious brain for thoughts like remembering your schedule for the day, or figuring out that last math problem you forgot to do on homework last night. You have driving habits that take over when you get in the car, so you're not eternally stuck in that intense concentration you had those first few drives as a teenager. And you have hand-washing habits that hopefully kick in every time after you use the bathroom, so that you don't have to think about all the bacteria that are sitting on your hands. Habits can be extraordinarily helpful in our lives, and they're a huge evolutionary advantage. But with the good come the bad, and bad habits have given habits in general a bad rep. A rep that they really don't deserve. According to Charles Duhigg, who wrote this lovely book, The Power of Habit, most habits come in a simple, easy cycle. First, a cue, a sensory stimulus, like seeing a donut on a table, or knowing that it's 3 o'clock, or sitting down on the couch to watch The Vampire Diaries. Next, a routine. Eating the donut you see, or going for your 3 o'clock run, or settling into your nasty TV-watching, nail-biting habit. Finally, a reward. This is the sugar rush that you get from eating your donut, or the endorphins you get from your run, or maybe getting rid of that last hangnail on your thumb. This whole cycle is evident inside our brains as well. Anne Gabriel, an MIT professor in the Department of Brain and Cognitive Sciences, explains that routines involving thought, action, or even emotion are made through repetition. Routines that have been repeated often enough can actually be seen in our brains. When someone triggers a habit, activity begins in the outer alert portion of the brain and then loops to the inner portion, a part called the striatum in the basal ganglia. Then, after completing the routine in the basal ganglia, the activity finally loops back out to the alert brain. All this looping connects our outer sensory signals to the habit routines that are stored in the basal ganglia. First, our outer brain notices a cue, and then sends activity into the inner parts of the brain so that it can deal with the routine, and then all the activity returns to the outer portions of the brain to make sure that the brain received its reward, so the monkey's juice, for example. Making a new habit with this information is actually pretty easy. Let's say you want to start running. First, pick an obvious cue, so the moment you get home from work. Next, make a routine. Put on your running clothes, put in your earbuds, play some awesome music, and then go run around the block. Then when you're done, provide yourself with an immediate reward. Not something like, I want to be healthier in the future, but something that's really immediate, like a smoothie or a cold glass of water, or maybe just the endorphins from running will help. With enough repetition, the moment you get home every day, you'll want to go on that run and get that smoothie at the end. So how do you break a bad habit? That depends a little. First, if your habit is something more than just mental, let's say it involves a drug addiction, you're gonna need help outside of just this video. However, if your habit is not intertwined with substance addiction, you're in luck. You only need to focus on changing the routine part of your habit loop. So keep the same cue and the same reward, but change everything in the middle. If you can remember all the way back to the beginning of this video, you might remember that Julio's brain learned to release dopamine at the cue, so when he saw the shape. But there was a downside to that early reward system. He stopped releasing dopamine at the time of his reward, his juice, but his brain still expected that reward. So if he didn't get his juice, his dopamine levels crashed. He was momentarily depressed. So we have to keep that same reward to avoid depressing ourselves, and we need to keep the same cue so that we don't just create a new habit with a new cue, so we only change the routine. Let's say you tend to snack when you're bored, like me. So you check your email, you laze around on Facebook, and you bore yourself enough to want something to do to break up the monotony of staring at your computer screen all afternoon. That's your cue. At this point, you would normally walk to the kitchen, grab the nearest bag of chips, and then return to your computer to consume them. That's your routine. Finally, you get the reward when you eat the chips. You've broken up your boredom and your stomach is full. Although, incidentally, your stomach wasn't ever empty to begin with. Now let's replace the routine with a healthier version. This time at your boredom cue, you walk to the kitchen and get a glass of water, and then return to the computer to drink it. You've achieved the exact same reward. You've broken up your boredom and your stomach is filled. And you had the same cue, so the only difference is, now you're filling yourself up with water, which is gonna hydrate you and let you maintain that beach bod you've been working towards all summer. The best way to change your routine is to make a plan. So you can't just say, I want to stop eating junk food and expect it to happen. You have to know what you're going to do instead. Anticipate temptation and know how you're going to replace it. Easy. But what if the habits you want to replace are more than just a little afternoon snacking issue? What if bad habits rule your life? You procrastinate, you tend to get in bad moods, you spend your money frivolously, you smoke, and you have bad dietary habits. That's where Keystone Habits come in. A Keystone Habit is a small routine change that has the power to change everything in your life. Sounds awesome, but the problem is, scientists don't really know how they work and have trouble finding them. Luckily, scientists found a few Keystone Habits by accident already. For example, people who make their bed every morning show more productivity throughout the day, including work, home, everywhere. Families that eat dinner together every night raise children that get better grades, have better homework skills, are more emotionally controlled, and have more confidence. And people who exercise habitually, even as little as once a week, smoke less, eat better, are more productive, have more patience, and use their credit cards less frequently. So, changing something as small as whether you make your bed in the morning or not can have resounding effects throughout your entire life. Which makes you think. And tomorrow, when you get out of bed, just think how easy it would be. If you want more info about habits, I have a bunch of links in the description for you to check out, and I would really suggest that you read Charles Duhigg's The Power of Habit, this lovely book right here. I linked Duhigg's website in the description as well if you want to check that out. I'm Vanessa Hayes, here for your brain. Thanks for watching.